When it comes time to output your document set, you have a couple options. You can print it on a hard copy printer or plotter, or you can export a PDF. So I'd like to walk through the process with you here, and it's basically the same process regardless of which method you choose. So to get started here, let's go to the File menu, and we'll start with Print. So just hover over Print, and then over here on the right-hand side, you're going to see a few different print options appear. This is the print command. You've also got print preview and print setup. Both of those are available from within the print dialog. So I'm actually going to show them to you from the print dialog instead of going to them separately. And then batch plot would allow you to run a separate session of Revit and print a set in the background. We're not going to go through that one here. All right, so let's do print. And that will display this dialog. And of course, you want to start at the top and make sure that you're choosing the right print device. So depending on what you have installed on your system, choose whatever printer you want to use there. Down here at the bottom, you have several options under print range. So if I do current window, notice that there's a preview button here and a setup button here. So I mentioned a moment ago that we would have access to both print preview and setup from this dialog. Let's click print preview. It will warn me that it's going to use raster printing. I'm just going to close that. And notice that we get a preview of the entire sheet fit to whatever size piece of paper I'm working on. Now, let's go ahead and close that. And notice that that actually closes all the way out. So if you want to stay in that dialog, you actually want to click print in there. I'll show you that in just a moment. But I wanted to close all the way out because what I want to do is switch sheets here and open up the A101 floor plan sheet. Before we go back to the print dialog, I just want to point out a few things in this sheet. So I'm going to zoom in here nice and close, and I want you to see that there's this rectangle here that's superimposing the title block. Now notice that if I hover over that, that's right inside the viewport edge. That is the crop region of the level 1 floor plan. It's currently turned on. In addition to that, there's this green dashed line here. There's this call out here that is not referenced. It doesn't have a sheet reference because that call out hasn't been placed on a sheet yet. Next to it are two call outs that are referenced. Those are both already on sheets. Okay, so keep all of that in mind as we move forward here and look at some of the additional print settings. So what I'm going to do is go back to File, highlight Print again, choose Print, and let me move this box out of the way so we can see some of that stuff in the background. All right. The next thing I want to show you is visible portion of the current window. If I go to preview, notice that it's just zoomed in on the area that I'm currently zoomed in back in Revit. So if you only want to print a small portion of the view, then just choose that option. Now, instead of clicking close this time, I'm going to click print. It's a little counterintuitive, but that takes me back to the print dialog. So let me move it over here again. All right, now let's consider setup. So remember, we have the setup button as well in here. And when I click that, there are several setup options. Now, honestly, I think most of these are self-explanatory. What size piece of paper do you want to use? My printer supports up to tabloid as a maximum, so I'll choose that, but you can choose what your printer supports. Do you want landscape or portrait? Do you want to center it on the sheet, or do you want to offset it from one of the corners? If you offset it from one of the corners, you get some options that are available there. Vector or raster processing. We saw a note about this a few moments ago. When I did a print preview of the cover sheet, it had a raster image, a shaded 3D view. So that's what it was telling me, that it had to force it to raster processing. And the reason it said that is because I asked for vector. So it defaults to vector, which I think most of the time gives you a higher quality output. But if it can't do vector, it'll just warn you with that dialog and it will do the views in raster that needs to. So most of the time I don't bother changing the setting. I just leave it alone. And in fact, that's true of all the appearance settings too. I'm going to accept the high quality. I'm going to accept color because again, if I'm printing out that cover sheet, I want it to print in color. Otherwise it would force it to black and white. Zoom. You can fit it to the page, especially if the sheet is smaller than the sheet that you designed for, or you can zoom 100% and then it will print to scale. If you want a half size set, you can change that to 50. So since I'm working in tabloid here, maybe 50 would be appropriate. Now, what I really wanted you to see was all these checkboxes down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go through a couple of these that I particularly like. The section tag here is blue in color. If you want it to print blue in color, you can check this box right there. We don't have any scope boxes, so I'm going to ignore that one. but we do have a reference plane. I drew one right here. Now I drew that just to demonstrate this checkbox. Most things in Revit will print if you see them on screen. So the general rule of thumb is if you see it on screen, it will print. Their only exceptions to that are these hide checkboxes that you see here. There are 4 of them. So one of those controls reference planes like that right there. The last time we saw reference planes was when we were working in the family editor. Hide crop boundaries. That's this rectangle that's superimposed over our title block. So I left that crop region turned on purpose so that we could demonstrate this feature. And then finally, this one's my favorite. Hide unreferenced view tags. This right here is an unreferenced view tag, while these 2 over here are referenced view tags. So when I check this box, it'll hide the callout head, but it'll leave the section and elevation markers alone. So let me go ahead and click OK here. And then let's click our plot preview one more time. Now you'll see that the referenced view indicators, the section and the elevation, are still displayed here in this view. But notice that the area where the callout in the kitchen area is invisible. So that was the result of checking that box. Notice the dashed green line is not there. That was the result of checking the box about reference planes. And notice that the line superimposed over the title block is not there because of the checkbox on crop regions. So I think all of those settings are useful when you print because it saves you the trouble of having to worry about trying to hide all of that stuff. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close this time to get all the way out. I'm not going to print. I just wanted you to see the overall settings. What I am going to do is go to the File menu, highlight Export, and show you Export PDF next. Now, you can get it here from the Export menu, but actually it's got a shortcut right up here on the Quick Access toolbar. So if you prefer, you can just click it there. Now, when you first glance at this dialog, you can see that it's almost the same as what we saw in the previous dialog. Current window, visible portion of current window. Now, what we didn't look at in the previous dialog was the selected views and sheets. This is a really powerful feature. So what I'm going to do here is click the little pencil icon here to edit this list. This is a complete list of every view and every sheet in this project. What I'm going to do is select just the sheets. So I'm going to select the cover sheet, hold down the Shift key, select the schedule sheet. That highlights all of the ones in between. I'll check the box, and then I'm going to come up here and click Save As and give this a name. So I'm going to call this All Sheets and click OK. So now I've just created a collection of entries that I want to print. Now, optionally, you can even edit the print order here of this set, but I'm satisfied with the order that they're printing in. But if you want to rearrange things, you can using that option there. So now I'm just simply going to click Select to actually go through with this selection. It'll ask me if I want to save that. I'll say yes. And it will show up right here as that entry there in that dropdown. All right. Next, under Export, the file name will default to the same name as the project. I'm fine with that. This setting right beneath it is really powerful. Combine all the selected views and sheets into a single PDF file. So I almost always choose that. If you uncheck that, you'll get a separate PDF for every single view and sheet. Now, I'm going to put it on my desktop, as you can see here, but you can just click Browse and put it somewhere else if you prefer. Now, the rest of the settings in this dialog we've already talked about. So what I'm going to do is just leave the page size set to use sheet size. So it will use whatever sheet size was set up in the project. I'm going to zoom it 100%. I'm going to let it stay centered. I'm going to use vector processing, high quality, print in color. I'm going to print the links in blue, and I'm going to hide the unreferenced view tags. So once I've chosen all of my settings there, I'll click Export. It's going to ask me if I want to save these settings for future use. If you say yes, it will ask you to give it a name. I'll just click No in this case and let it go through with the export. Now, when it's done, that does generate a warning again about raster processing. So that's because my cover sheet isn't shaded, and it's just letting me know that it had to use that for that view. So I'm just going to click anywhere to dismiss that warning. I'm going to minimize Revit. And here on my desktop, you can see the file that was output. So I'm just going to double click to open that. It's going to open in my default PDF file, which is Adobe Acrobat. And then over here, I can expand the page thumbnails, and notice that every single sheet was exported to this single PDF file. So that's really powerful. All right, let me click on one of the floor plan sheets here. Actually, let's go to the level 1 floor plan sheet here, and let's zoom in a little bit. And then let's pan down to that location at the corner there. And just to show you that those same print settings were applied here, that we have that call out view hidden in the kitchen area. We're not seeing the reference plane or the crop region. And notice that these reference view tags, not only are they blue, but notice that if I hover over them, there's a little pointer icon. And if I click that, it will take me right to the sheet that contains that view. So that's a really nice feature of these PDF files that get generated. And that works for any of the cross references. So I can get back to the section from an elevation view. It even works for the floor plans if you click on the level heads. So really handy. So at this point, feel free to experiment further with any of the settings in the print or export dialogues. If you want to print out a physical copy, you can do that. I've provided an output version of the office building as well. So you want to print that one or generate a PDF from that one for practice, you can try your hand at that as well.